Hello music makers, welcome back to Make the Music. Today we're in part 3 of our Mix a Song from Start to Finish series. In the first video we covered how to organize our session, and in part 2 we did the balance or the static mix of the song. This is what we got here. Now we're going to get into master bus processing. And what is master bus processing? Well, if you're using any sort of DAW, I'm using Reaper here with a Pro Tools skin. There's this master track here, and you can insert plugins on this master track and start processing the mix. And this is often referred to as top-down mixing. And what top-down mixing is essentially you're going to start from the very top, the master track, and work your way down through the rest of the tracks for your processing. And master bus processing is really powerful because you can modify the mix on a global level, make some sweeping changes to help get your mix to where it needs to be very quickly. Now, some people say that's for the mastering phase. We shouldn't be putting plugins on the stereo or the master bus. And I can see that logic, but even back in the old days when they're mixing on consoles, the consoles was affecting the mix on a global level with a little compression, a little saturation. It was already causing an effect in the entire mix. So this is nothing new, and it's really effective in the digital domain to rein your mix in appropriately. So we did the static mix here. Here's what it sounds like. Our levels are really good. Our static mix is sounding great. I hope you're following along with me. Remember, you can download these tracks in the description down below, 100% free. Just tell us where to send it and you can mix along with me. So where are we going to start with the master track? And here's what I like to do when it comes to mixing on the master bus. So I usually like to do 3 or 4 different moves. I usually have an EQ, some form of compression, which is actually the most important part, a little bit of saturation, and then some stereo width. I might add, console emulation. I'm not going to be using any Slate plugins on this mix because I want to show you can get a great mix with stock plugins. So I'm using stock Reaper plugins. So what I'm going to start with here is just an EQ insert. So I'm going to go here. Let's find Re EQ. This is the stock EQ plugin in Reaper. And here it is. And what I'm going to do is just listen to the mix and see if there's any buildup that I don't like, anything that's sticking out to me, maybe add a little lift to the mix. Really, I'm going to be using my ears here. Left on a Thursday, shot right out of the sky. Eagles are born to fly, but some never come back down to earth. Okay, so what did I do here? Well, what I did is I made some small moves. 1.5 dB of a removal here of some of these low mids. I just felt there's a bit of a buildup here and just a little bit too much woofiness. And instead of fixing that on a bunch of individual tracks during the mix, it was much easier for me to just make a small little cut there and have it not have that buildup. I did add an high pass filter. There's no sub information in this mix. It's a rock mix. So adding just a small high pass filter, 30 hertz, nothing crazy. We go up here, we're going to start affecting the mix. But 30 hertz, you're just cutting out whatever sub information is there. It's just not necessary. Then I added a little shelf on the top end, 1.2 dB. This is not going to be my final mixing moves when it comes to using modifying the master track here. I actually make small modifications throughout the entire mix just to rein things in. But as a start, I like where this is. It feels more alive, a little tighter in that low end. All in all, I think that was a good decision. Next, I'm going to add some saturation. And Reaper has a stock saturation plugin. I find that around 50 to 60% is the sweet spot with this plugin. Too much and it just becomes oversaturated. Can't really hear the effect here. I've just been using this plugin for a long time and I know where it sounds good. Left on a Thursday, shot right out of. See, when I get to about 100%, it just sounds overhyped. 50% is good. It's just adding some harmonics to the mix. And it's just about making 5% moves on the master track. You can easily destroy your mix if you make too drastic decisions here. There's a lot of work that needs to be done on the individual tracks, and that's going to happen. These are about small gradual moves to make the mix a little bit better, just 5% better. We don't want to be doing things like this. This would be an example of what you don't want to do on the master track. Left on a Thursday, shot right out of the oh, look how much better my mix is sounding. No, it's just sounding out of control. These are too drastic of boosts. The mix is starting to sound really weird tonally. It's going to sound very weird when you put it on other systems like your car or your earbuds. It's just going to sound way different than all the other tracks. This is not something you won't want to go too far with this. Next, I'm going to add a stereo width plugin. Another thing, less is more when it comes to stereo width plugins. And so Reaper has one here, stereo enhancer, it looks like. And what I'm going to do is just width low percent, 115, width high, 115. You don't want to go farther than that. You start making your mix wider than that, you're going to get weird phasing issues because we've got tracks crossing over between the stereo field. It's not good. Believe me, this is a good sweet spot with this plugin. It just sounds 5% wider, which is exactly what I'm trying to do with this plugin. Subtlety. So here's what we got so far. Yes, I did add some gain there, and that's going to be taken off with the compression, but it just sounds a little brighter, a little more exciting, just a little bit, and a little wider, and that's all I was going for with this mix. Nothing too crazy here. Then the last piece, in my opinion, the most important part of the entire master chain is this compressor here. Now, another thing, less is more when it comes to master bus processing. With this compressor, you can easily destroy your mix, but there's a sweet spot here. And I really love master bus compression. It really makes your mix sound finished even before going to a limiter into mastering. It makes it sound like it's ready. And what it's really doing is it's hitting the transients, specifically the kick, snare, and some of the vocal. It's hitting those transients and stopping the mix from feeling like things are poking out. You know, when you mix to a professional or you listen to a professional track, it doesn't feel like weird elements are poking out of the mix and coming out of nowhere. Instead, it feels very tight, concise, and very intentional. And that's exactly what this compressor is going to do. It's going to make the mix feel very tight, almost like a steam engine coming right at you, okay? And it's going to feel very reined in, yet powerful. And so what I like to do, if you're using Reaper, I like this Master Bus Glue or Master Bus New York Comp. This is going to be a starting point. Now, this is not what I'm going to use for, I'm actually going to bring the ratio down to about, let's go with a 4:1 ratio here. Now for master bus compression, you want to go with a slow attack, a quick release. This means it's going to hit the transients slowly and then release it pretty quickly, but still rein in the mix there. And then you want to really adjust this threshold. We're aiming for anywhere between 2 to 4 dB of gain reduction. It depends on the style. Sometimes I go over that with certain emulation plugins, but with something like this, I'm really going to be shooting for 3 dB. And nothing more than that. I'll show you how bad it sounds when you start to go for more than that here, and I'm going to make it the entire frequency range. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play the track and I'm going to start compressing this thing. Left on a Thursday, shot right out of the sky. Eagles are born to fly, but some never come back down to earth. Now this number is going to change as we go through the mix because we're going to start compressing some of the individual tracks. So like I said, I'm constantly going to be messing with, and it looks like some of the vocals are peaking. So that's something I should have gotten right in the gain staging phase, but zero that back out there. So I'm liking this range between -30 and 33 as the threshold. Now when I add plugins and the gain adds up in the mix, I'm going to be dialing this back slowly to keep it in that -2 to 3 dB of gain reduction. And that's the sweet spot. So I'm constantly checking this during my mix. I might be mixing drums. I'm going back here making small changes. Like, okay, maybe I don't need as much of a shelf. I brightened up the snare, or maybe I need to up the threshold because the drums are a bit louder and the kick's hitting a bit harder. It's a constant adjustment process. But for right now with the static mix, I like where this is. That feels much more reined in here. I'll turn it off. It feels way fuller when I turn that compressor on, in my opinion. And so what I'm going to do is bypass the entire chain, turn it back on, And this is the changes we've made so far to the mix. So I turn this chain on, immediately it feels brighter, a little wider, and punchier because of that compression. So 4 basic plugins: EQ, saturation, a little stereo enhancement, and then master bus compression. Now I'm going to show you what this sounds like if you go overboard with this. If you do this too much, this is what it's going to sound like. See, it just squishes everything. All the transients are lost. The punch is completely gone from the track. This is not something we want to do. -10 is way too extreme. So right there, 2 to 3 dB. To me, that is absolutely perfect for this mix. I'm absolutely obsessed with master bus compression. I think it's almost magical in a sense. Now, these plugins are not going to fix your mix if your static mix is terrible. If my static mix was bad, this still wouldn't help it, okay? And the rest of the mixing process is still super important, but this really adds quite a bit of mileage to your mix and makes it sound a lot more finished before you even put a plugin on any of the individual tracks. And so a lot of times when I'm tracking an album or doing production for an album, I have my master chain already set up with a compressor set up just so I know what this final sound is going to be like. That's how much I really like master bus compression on my stuff, because it gives it that finished feel. Unlike a limiter is something different. I don't put that on here in the mixing phase, although I might do a check. That's a video coming later. We're going to check what our mix will sound like with references and things like that, but that's coming. So that's this video, how to use your master bus to improve your mix. Next video, we're going to go over drums, and we're going to start getting into all these different elements here of the mix and start really getting this mix to a place where we like. So thank you so much for watching this video. You can follow along with the mix by going to the description box down below and downloading the tracks. I'll see you guys the next time. Get back to making music.